Hello everyone, I'm GM Denes Boros and this is Viewer's Choice. We're going to watch few very interesting games. Like everyone else here, I'm interested to see what we have. So let's start with this game between Ethgar and Simon, who was named 299996. Let's see. Okay, e4, that seems like a legal move. c5, bishop c4. Is there any fans out there for bishop c4? Yeah, not many fans, and it doesn't include me. The problem is not the move that black makes, e5. What's wrong with e5? Yes.
Leaves a hole on d5.
Yeah, it leaves a hole on d5, and that was exactly the point of bishop c4, awaiting this move, which is a really bad move. So instead, what should black try to do? Yes, Arjun?
e6.
Yeah, e6. Try to blockade this bishop's diagonal and potentially play d5. Black might even consider playing a6, castle, and b5, and just chasing the bishop away. And if he is nice enough, or she's nice enough to play bishop b3, then we just capture it with c4. So Simon, with a lot of numbers, played e5. And white played queen f3. I'm again not a great fan of this move, but it's not as terrible this time. Can anyone help me? Why isn't it so bad this time? Yes?
Because it's not really, there's no way to kind of blockade the queen. It's not going to be terrible there.
Yeah, it's not terrible there because it's not that it be blockaded, but it does put some pressure on the d5 square. And eventually the knight can find a nice spot on g3. Well, let's see if that actually happens. Knight f6, knight c3, g6. Well, this g6 move I don't like because in general fianchettos are nice, but they do weaken the kingside position a little bit. And black already has a lot of weaknesses in the center. So knight d5, that was unnecessary. d3 would have been better. Knight d5, bishop g7, correct. Develop castle as quickly as you can. d3, d6, and d6 was not good. He should have taken on d5. Bishop takes d5 and castles. And this doesn't look like much of a fun for black because this bishop on g7 is horrible and this bishop on d5 is beautiful. It's the beauty and the beast again. So d3, d6, h3. Can we find a better move than h3? The guy with the glasses. What could be better than the move h3?
Probably just knight e2 that way you can.
Knight e2, or what else can white put some pressure on black's position?
Bishop g5.
Bishop g5, yes. Thank you. And now it will be pretty hard to move, even though it's not losing yet for black. You can still play knight d7, but you can feel the discomfort already for the black side. h3, castles, knight e2, bishop e6, knight e, c3. Just defending this d5 square forever. Knight c6, castles, rook b8. Knight d4 was needed already. Rook b8, bishop g5, knight d4, queen g3. Thank God that knight is on c3, because otherwise there'll be a knight e2 check. Knight takes c2. So black took a pawn. But does that solve all his problems in this position? Yes.
No.
Why not?
Because he still has weaknesses and white still controls all the white squares.
White does control all of these white squares, especially that d5 square. But there's one big issue. and that's called that big, huge pin along the h4, d8 diagonal. So rook c1, knight d4, queen h4. Bishop d5, knight d5, knight d2 check, king h1, knight takes c1. And now I think this is a critical position. I don't know what White actually played here, but I don't know. Because we're at a dilemma. Should we start taking everything he gives us, or should we take back on c1? Yeah?
I would take on c1 because the knight f6 isn't going away. Well, the knight on c1 might get escaped to e2.
Yeah. So let's see what happened. Bishop f6. But I agree, we should just take on c1 because our pin is eternal. He can't move. This knight-bishop combination plus the extra queen on h4 makes it sure that we're winning here. Because the queen can't move really, because we'll take with check, and we'll soon mate with queen h6, queen g7. And anyways, if he can't stop the idea of taking on f6, he's just dead lost. But Ethgar took on f6. Takes, king g7. And now again, questions. How should we continue?
And so at least get a pawn and expose his king.
Okay, queen takes h7, as you just told us to play, is good, I think. Queen takes f6, just as played here. And how should we continue now?
f4.
Why not take on, you said f4.
Yeah.
Why not just take on c1?
Because then you lose the momentum of the attack.
Okay, he took on c1. So f4. It's a very interesting idea because all of our pieces are attacking and this knight is not really doing anything. So for example, if knight goes to e2, we can take on e5. If king e7, then we just checkmate. Which is quite a nice checkmate with all the black pieces undeveloped. Otherwise, this looks fairly dangerous for black. I don't really trust the idea of taking on e5, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. So anyways, f4 was a real idea here to play. And as you just said, keeping the momentum was an idea here. So that's why it's an important thing to stop before you take pieces. Don't automatically take everything that's in your way. Rook takes c1, rook h8, which unfortunately doesn't win the queen but loses the f7 pawn. King g5, queen f3, queen d7, king g1. A little bit mysterious. Maybe queen g3 immediately would have been better. King g1, rook f8, queen g3, king f6. How would you evaluate this position? I wonder. We do have an extremely strong bishop on c4, an active queen, but those rooks are getting connected. Black seems to gotten out of trouble right now, so it's not entirely clear for me what's the situation, but what does the audience think? Yeah.
I think triple zeros.
Triple zeros. Why?
So,
So the audience said it's triple zeros, but I heard a sarcastic laugh. What was your opinion?
I think black's a little bit better personally, just by the activity of the two rooks. On F8.
So the other opinion is that black is actually slightly better.
Slightly better, just because the rook on c1 is out of the game right now.
I think, paradoxically, I think both is close to the truth. Because white is really active, but at the moment black has a slight material advantage. So I could see that in the long term it could favor black, but white is really active now, right? So f4 takes, queen takes f4, king g7, queen g5, queen d8. Black is aggressively looking for the idea of exchanging queens. Queen g4, queen f6, queen d7 check, rook f7. I don't think rook f7 was necessary, right?
Yeah, I think black's losing.
Yeah, obviously rook f7 was a terrible move. King h6 would have been better. And would we still evaluate this position around equal? 0.1 for white.
Because you get 2 pawns from the exchange.
Well, you do get the pawn, but actually, if you take, I can attack your pawn. If you, let's say you take, I take on b2, and then I'm really dangerous.
Well,
So,
then
rook f1. Okay, but then I'll have queen g5 ideas. This will get very dangerous.
this isn't good for white.
Yeah. So, yeah, white needs to tread carefully here. I'm not sure that it's terrible for white, but it's slightly worse, definitely worse. Okay, rook f7 wasn't the best idea. Takes, queen takes, and obviously here white is just totally winning. Queen takes d6, queen takes a2. How should you continue here for white? Should we take on c5?
And then with a rook.
Yeah, exactly. Queen e5 would be very precise here. Because as you said, if king h7, then rook takes c5, and now it's a much, much more favorable situation for white than if we take immediately, as the rook swings to c7 with decisive threats. And the queen loves being centralized, as it can defend our own king while also harassing the black king. So queen takes c5. Yeah, queen e5 was a better move. Queen takes c5, queen takes b2, check, king f6, check, king e6, king e5, and queen f6 mate. Well, a topsy-turvy game, but an entertaining one. And actually, white did find a clear-cut way how to play the position, although he was a little bit imprecise in actually gaining the decisive advantage. All right, let's move to game 2. Okay. So this game was sent by Fonseca from Brazil, and he's playing black. Let's see how it goes. e4, c5. What opening is this?
Sicilian.
It's a Sicilian. It's a Fischer favorite.
This is the Najdorf.
Yes, this is obviously the Najdorf. So, white played a move that is really rare these days, but played by Judith Polgar and I think maybe even Derek Christensen. And recently, Nakamura beat MVL with this bishop d3 move. Honestly, it's quite passive. And not because of e5, because if black would play e5, the knight can jump to e2 and eventually to g3, and that was the game. So e5 I don't think is the critical move in this position. But black played b5, which I think is inaccurate, because whenever black plays b5 way too early, white can punish that. Any ideas how can we punish this early b5 move in the Najdorf? So a4, b4. Let's be more aggressive. We're playing against the Najdorf. We must be aggressive. How can we be more aggressive than knight ce2?
Knight d5.
Yeah, rawr, knight d5. And obviously, who found the idea of knight d5 was none other than Bobby Fischer. Because when he played h3, and he invented this system, his opponent played b5, and then he essayed this move of knight d5, already kind of pinpointing the weaknesses around the black queen side. All right, so bishop d3, b5, and similarly in this situation you can also play knight d5 here. The point is, if black takes on d5, e takes, black already cannot really move the e pawn, and also bishop b7 can be punished by this c4 move, and takes, and black is really passive in these type of positions. Or we can do it with a4, b4, knight d5, and if e6, then we just take, and black pieces won't be coordinated enough. So white is clearly better. So b5, a3. a3 is sometimes good, but here white needed to be more aggressive. For example, black could have played with g6, which is the usual plan, and bishop g7, and then this bishop on d3 would be rather passive. So b5, a3, bishop b7, castle, and now knight d7, h3, and g6. A nice little double fianchetto by black. How can white try to play against this system? Have any of you seen this position before? Kind of. On which side will white will play eventually? On the king side, obviously, because most of the pieces are kind of staring at the black king. So white played knight f3, but that's kind of against his own play. Knight f3 just slows down any kind of ideas of mating black. So white needs to find a different plan. Yes?
I was thinking f4.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're aiming towards the king side, you might want to push f1.
Yeah. f4 is pretty good, although you have to be wary that queen b6 can be a trouble.
Yeah, but here you have bishop e3.
We do have bishop e3, but if we miss this queen b6 idea, we might get into big troubles. But here is fine. And bishop g7, now here there is a typical idea that you can use to put more pressure on the e5 and f5 square. This is a very useful move to remember if you're playing the white side. You might encounter these positions in Pirks and modern defenses. So the knight on d4 is a little bit loose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can we improve our piece so it'll be actually useful in this position? Yeah?
Now I think knight f3 might be okay.
Yes. Knight f3 prepares this idea of e5, which is obviously very edgy, and white usually only plays it if it works. Otherwise, white might just go queen e1, let's say rook c8, queen h4, queen c7, and f5. And what is white's plan after f5? Can someone help me with that? Yeah.
Play bishop h6.
Yeah, to play, let's say knight c5, bishop h6, and just to try attack with knight g5. And you can soon see that this can actually turn out to be fairly decisive. Because what's coming up next is taking on g7, taking on g6. Okay, let's play a random move for black, let's say like rook e8. Then white can take, f takes, and rook takes f6 is already kind of decisive, because if rook takes, then we just take on h7 and the c7 queen drops. And if the king takes, how can we win? Well, we can play rook f1 check first. Or we can just take on h7 and just be a pawn up. So this is actually a very, very poisonous idea for white, to play knight f3, queen e1, queen h4. So usually black tries to stay on this diagonal with the black queen, so he can try to exchange the queens. And this will turn into a very wild tactical game later on, if white plays this f4, knight f3 plan. Now, white missed his chance and most probably didn't know that he should play that way and played knight f3 instead, which is not good, because there's no plan associated with this move. Bishop g7, rook e1. What else can white try to do in this position? Okay, we played knight f3, but then we have to come up with a different plan then. So there's no more f4 idea here. What else can we try to do here? He played rook e1, but he could have gone bishop e3, castles, queen d2, and tried to exchange that naughty bishop on g7. And I'm not saying white is better, but white is in the game. So rook e1, castle, knight h2. And maybe the other plan that white often plays with reversed colors in the English system is like bishop f1 and trying to play knight d5 or bishop g5. Although bishop g5 would invite rook takes c3 sacrifices here. Castles, knight h2, knight e5. A typical, very strong move. I like this move by black, because as soon as white moves away to a worse place, black activates his knights and puts it in a central, very active spot on e5. f4, knight takes d3, c takes d3, knight d7. So how can we sum up the situation? Who's better? Who has a clear-cut plan? Who doesn't? Yeah?
I think black.
Yeah. As you say, white really doesn't have a plan here. Black indeed has the bishop pair and a slight advantage. We don't necessarily need to open up the position with f5. We'll do it if we feel it's the right time. Knight e2, rook c8, bishop e3, and that was a pawn. Rook a2, bishop g7. But to be honest, black's position is very comfortable, and with correct play, black should be able to build on his advantage of bishop pair and, in general, a more strategically better position. Bishop e3 takes, bishop g7, knight g3, rook e8. Rook e8 I don't really understand. What else could black try to play here? Or try to play for? Yeah?
Maybe he'll play h5, h4.
h5, h4 is an interesting idea, but you're kind of helping, giving your opponent some play. He wants to play on the king side anyways. Where does black have the advantage in this position? Yeah, on the queen side. So if you have the advantage on one of the sides, you should move more pieces on that direction. And where would...
6, knight a4.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That's a good strategic plan. You could go to c5 as well if you like your knight on an outpost. But I like knight b6 as well, because you don't close your rook that way. And often it's important to keep your rook's file open. So knight b6 is perfect. And if, let's say, queen f3, then knight a4. And we can already feel the heat in this position if we're white, because the knight is landing on c3 and it will be a monster. And we won't have real time to get rid of it. And black might even consider rolling all those pawns with a5, b4. And with the help of that knight, it'll soon be a win. So I think, as you said, knight b6 would be stronger than rook e8. h4, h5. h5 is good. He just wants to stop the idea of h4, h5. It's a good idea to stop your opponents from having a good plan. f5, rook f8. That's an okay move, but not a great one. f takes, queen b3, king h7, bishop f6, bishop g5, knight e5. A good move. Why is knight e5 a good move here? Yeah.
Because you can trade off one of white's good pieces.
Yeah. So black is trading off the best pieces of white, and also it's a good thing to exchange pieces when your opponent is down material. So bishop takes f6, knight f3, g takes f3, rook f6, rook f1, queen d7, eyeing this h3 square. He defends though, e5. Why is this e5 move good? I like this e5 move. Yeah.
It's nailing down white's two weak spots at the cost of one weak spot.
Yeah, so it nails down white's position. Also, it puts these pawns on black squares, so it helps our bishop to move more easily. Rook f2, rook cf8, queen c3, and now the bishop arrives with deadly threats on h3. Rook h1, queen f7, back, bishop g4. Nice tactical idea, because white can't take because of rook f2 takes, queen takes f2, and black is just totally winning here. Fade bishop g4. So after bishop g4, white resigned. This was a very good game played by white. I mean, this was a very good game played by black. And even though b5 in the opening was a little bit suspicious, it was a good display of harmonic piece play by black, which eventually just proved far stronger than white's play. So it was a good game by black. Yeah. Now, let's take a look at this game. d4, d5, c4, d takes. What is the name of this opening? Yes? Queen's Gambit accepted. Caruana just started playing this recently. Knight f3, bishop e6. Is bishop e6 a brilliant move in this position? No, not really. This bishop is just blockading this pawn, so it will be very difficult to to actually develop for black. e3, knight c6, a very weird move. c6 would be better with the idea of playing b5 and trying to keep that c4 pawn. Knight c6, knight d2, b5. White plays bishop e2 here. What else could we play in this position for white? What comes to mind in these positions? Yeah? a4 is one idea, but there's one move that is very, very strong in these particular Queen's Gambit accepted and these sacrificed pawn positions. Yeah? How can you break up these pawns? How can we undermine them?
B3.
Yeah, b3. And actually b3, this is the basic idea of the d4 variations, this b3 move. Because if c takes b3, we take on b5 first, and then we have an overwhelming positional advantage because this d4, e3, f2 pawn chain is just way superior to black's structure. Black does have this c3 move now, but we need not fear that and play knight e4. And even if he defends it, we can undermine his position with a3. And even if that wouldn't work, we'll have an active knight on c5, and it's way enough compensation. White is just clearly better here. So it's an important thing to remember this b3 move. Bishop e2, it's a fine move. Bishop g4, castle, e6. Very good decision by black. Black just decides that it is time to develop pieces, regardless what he'd done with his center before. h3, bishop f3, not a good idea because the white squares are already very weak. Takes, takes, queen d7, and here comes the move that we've been talking about. b3. Very good idea. c3, the same thing, knight e4, and every bits and pieces, everything is kind of weak around black's position. And after a3, a5 doesn't even work because a takes b4. There's no a takes b4 because the rook is hanging. So black needs to take with the bishop. And after queen c2, we'll take back the pawn and we'll have just a superior position. c takes, knight takes b3, rook b8, bishop d2, a6. All very well played here. How should we continue here if you're white? What moves spring to mind in these positions for white? First, let's detect the weaknesses. Where are black's weaknesses in this position?
Is exposed king just because the king side's not developed from black?
Yeah, he's exposed king, yes.
The knight on c6 doesn't seem that great to me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So if we can pinpoint that this knight on c6 is a little bit loose.
I like rook c1.
Yeah, rook c1 is a great move. Simple chess. That's all we need, simple chess. Now, I can pinpoint how bad black's position is. If black would play the natural knight e7 move, then we'll just jump to c5 and put pressure on black's position immediately. And if black has to play queen c8, that's the beginning of the end. We know that this is not going to end well for black. No way. So I think rook c1 is a good move. But he played knight c5. But I have my doubts about this move, knight c5. What's the problem with knight c5? Yep. Yeah, black can take it. Takes. And the fact that we let black exchange a passive piece on f8 is not good. And also the fact that after we took on c5, we just closed this very weak c line, which we would have used for great effect after rook c1, which I very much like. So knight c5 takes, knight e5. Well, black should have developed his pieces to e7, and that would have been great. So knight e5, bishop b4, knight f3, queen takes f3, knight f6. It's a little bit dubious. I think knight e7 is better, trying to protect the c6 square. If black actually manages to build a blockade here and manages to castle as well, black will be fine and might even be better because of the extra pawn. So knight f6. What should we play here with white? Black just allowed us to do something that he really shouldn't have. And white, I think, should live the moment and find this move. Yes?
I think c6, because then you
Yeah.
start castle.
Yeah, c6. And more than likely, white's position is near winning because black is not going to castle in the near future. And even if, let's say, queen d5 and we wouldn't play queen g3, but rook fd1, the simple move, we'll still have like a huge advantage because he can't castle, and in the long run, we can undermine black's position with a4 and a takes b5. So rook d1, queen e7, rook d2, knight d5. Really unnecessary move. Black could have just castled, and I'm sure black is much, much better here. Also because this bishop is just terrible now. We had the chance to make it a beautiful piece after c6 a few moves ago, here this bishop would work perfectly and we'll have a brilliant position. But after rook d1, queen e7, c6 is no longer possible because of queen takes b4. And after, let's say, rook d2 castles, black is just much better. And this bishop is just eyeing a pawn which really does nothing. So knight d5 wasn't great. Also, queen c6 check should have been played for better or worse. Rook d2, knight d5, a3. It's an okay move. Knight takes, a takes, and c6. Well, this move is not good, obviously. It's a very bad move. Black definitely needs to castle here. And black is up a pawn, but white does have the open d line, so it's not that easy yet. Black might be slightly better, but if you have the d line in these rook and queen endgames, white has chances to hold, especially that this a6 pawn is a little bit loose and weak. So takes, c6, not a good move. Rook d1, not a good one. We need to take on c6, rook d1, castle, takes, h6, bam, taking the a6 pawn, queen c7, c6, rook b6, not a good move. And especially if you have a protected c pawn, try not to move it until you're sure you're not going to lose it. Because if your b pawn just creates you this protected pawn, you can use this 50 moves later as well. So this is kind of an advantage for the long term. So playing c6 now was a very bad idea in this position. Rook b6, rook d7, queen takes a6. And suddenly black is fine again. Queen a7, rook a6, queen b7, takes b7. Well, black, I don't think needed to take on b7. In fact, rook a6 was not really needed anyways. It could be a little bit uncomfortable because of these 7th rank pieces of white, but it should be fine for black. Rook a6, queen b6 takes, rook a2, rook takes b5. So after some play, we reach this endgame. And this should be pretty much winning for white. g5, trying to create a loft for the king. Rook c5, rook b2. Is there any move that could be potentially better than rook c5?
Rook b1.
Yeah, rook b1. Just trying to
Get behind it.
have a pawn behind the pawn, yes. Have the rook behind the pawn, yes. Rook c5, rook b2, b5. But this is also a good plan because the white rooks are very active on the c and d files. So this could work as well. f5, although rook, on a second thought, rook b8, rook b8 could be a problem. Okay, f5, not a good move. Rook d6, and after this is just winning because the b pawn is just promoting. In general, if you have endgames, try not to push all of your pawns because they'll get weak. And black should have just tried to wait, play either king g7 or rook b8, kind of just waiting for white to show his cards, try to win the position. If you push too many of your pawns, you'll might too many weaknesses and you lose because of them. You might not lose necessarily because of the b pawn, but because of your pawn weaknesses. Rook d6, rook f6, b6, f4, rook c8, king f7, check, b7. And actually that is the reason why black is losing, because he pushed his f pawn. Otherwise there wouldn't have been these rook c8, rook d7, and b7 moves, which just win, and as the white pawn on b7 is queening, this position is just dead lost for black, and after rook g8, black resigned. So in general, try to develop first, try to castle, and don't get too greedy and hold to c4 pawns, because that just don't work out well. Yes?
I have a question about
The last game, this was sent by Hoefer, and he was black. B3, a Larsen favorite and also a Rapport favorite. Not a terribly impressive move, but it's playable. E5, bishop b2, knight c6. I think the Larsen system, the Larsen variation, yes. E3, knight f6, bishop b5. And here comes an Eric Rosen suggestion, which was e4. I guess the idea is to pin down white's position, and even if white decides to exchange down that pawn, it'll slow down white a little bit, and black will get a normal position. Bishop e7 or bishop b4 check. e4, so white played knight e2, d5, castle, bishop d6, d3, and this position seems all normal and wonderful for white, but if we're familiar with some ideas in these positions, white might actually be in real trouble already. Why is white in big trouble? Yes? What?
Bishop h2.
Yeah, the Greek gift works. So white plays king h1, but we also always have to check how good is it. So king takes h2, knight g4 check. It's important to start with the knight check. If he goes back to g1, queen h4, and now we have this mate idea on queen h2. The only move is rook e1, but then we just take, check. You always have the draw, but obviously who wants a draw when we can win a queen? Knight takes e3 and double attacking on the queen and the g2 pawn. So this would have been a nice win, but white didn't want any of that. King h1. And now black is in a dilemma whether to retreat with the bishop or not. These are not easy questions because one of them might be decisive, the other one might just give a little bit of an advantage for black. How should we continue here? Yeah?
I played knight g4
Mm-hmm.
the attack.
And why would you play knight g4? Why not bishop d6?
Both are good, but the whole point of bishop takes h2 is to attack.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it if you have a
Yeah.
bishop on the board.
Good point. So knight g4 is extremely strong, and as you pointed out correctly, if you're going for a plan, and if you're given an option to continue following your own plan, continue with it. Don't start changing plans. That's when trouble stirs up. Bishop d6 indeed would be just a slight advantage, because even though white lost this pawn, it's not the end of the world yet. And also, white does have some developmental advantage on the queen side. So knight g4 was played, g3. So knight g4, although very principled, is a little bit risky because white can trap the bishop on h2 with g3. So how should we continue now? Yes?
I play h5, h4.
h5, h4 is an idea, but actually black found a very good idea here, and that's queen g5.
Oh, queen left.
Just going and coming closer to the white king. King g2, queen f5, knight f4. In fact, if white will play something innocuous as knight c3, black already has a decisive tactical idea here. There are multiple ways to win, but there's one tactical idea that would win on the spot. Many ideas how we could win in this position. The point of the whole thing would be to try to get close to this king with our queen on g5.
He's here.
Mm-hmm. some knight sacrifices. Well, some knight sacrifices don't really work at the moment, and also this knight is going to be our helper in the mate. What's your idea? How can we? Yeah, bishop takes g3. So if knight takes, then queen h4 check, and then we just mate on h2. So indeed, we need that knight for the attack. So that's why we wouldn't want to sacrifice it already. And also this piece on h2 is kind of passive, and we would be happy to exchange it, even sacrifice it, because it's mostly is in the way. The other way would be to go queen h5, but obviously bishop takes g3 is just much, much better. So queen g5, king g2, queen f5, knight f4, g5. And this g5 move is very reckless. I think black could just play something like queen g5, but g5 is like a reckless and very brave move, which actually is very strong too. For example, d takes happened, but if bishop takes h8, then g takes f4, g takes f4, and now I'd like to ask you what move will be the winner here. And actually, it is indeed going to be a knight move this time.
Knight take e3.
Knight takes e3, indeed. And f takes.
Queen h3.
King f.
Bishop g3.
If king g1, then queen h2 mate. King e2.
Queen g2.
Queen g2. Rook f2.
Queen take f2.
Yes. A very, very elegant win. So this g5, even though I'm not 100% sure it's perfect, because, for example, I can try to hold after knight h5, but it's a very nice, daring idea that Hoefer played, and it's very tough to face this at the board. So d takes e4 was played. Bishop takes h8, as proven by Jason, is bad because of this takes, and knight sacrifice. And obviously, if the white pieces will not survive, even if he takes on h2, because queen h3 and queen g2 mate. Okay, so he took on e4, d takes e4, queen d5, g takes, bishop takes c6, takes, queen f5, bishop f5, bishop h8. Well, white kind of was forced to exchange queens, otherwise black was really close to mating. Takes, and now f3, king h1, and white plays a brilliant move here. I mean, black plays a brilliant move here. That you don't really see in endgames. Yes? Castles. Castles, a very nice move to play on move 17 in the middle of the endgame. Bishop c3, and now he finds another really nice maneuver which will seal the deal for the day. So black basically needs one more piece. The rook, yes, exactly. And if the rook can enter the battlefield, it's going to be a one battle. Knight takes f2 would lose that piece on h2, so, but you can bring that rook over without any blood spilt. There'll be a move, a rook maneuver that will just destroy white's position.
Rook d6.
Rook d6 with the idea?
Rook h6.
Rook d6, indeed. And now the rook enters the fray with decisive threats. Bishop g7, rook g6, bishop f8. But black is comfortable and just chases away the bishop on f8. Knight c3, king e8, rook h6, knight d1, bishop g3, king g1, check. And black won because white resigned, seeing that king h1 fails to bishop e5 check, king g1, and takes on a1. And it's a piece up with an ongoing attack. So these games are pretty nice, especially the last one and the Najdorf we saw. And I think we can learn to develop our pieces first, castle, and then go pawn hunting later. I think that's the moral of this lesson we had from these games. Thank you.